starting up. Give it about 30 seconds though.
Good evening, Douglas County School District community, and thank you for joining us again for another town hall meeting. My name is Nate Jones. I'm the communications manager for the Douglas County School District, and I'm once again honored to be here tonight serving as the moderator for tonight's discussion. Today's town hall is scheduled for an hour and will focus on supporting social, emotional, and mental health needs and serving students with special needs. We know you have a lot of questions, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to answer some of the questions that community members have submitted over the past few days, and we'll have a couple of community members. Actually, I don't believe we do have anybody joining us today, so I will be reading all of the questions. I am honored, however, to introduce our panelists tonight. With us this evening, we've got DCSD Personalized Learning Officer, Nancy Ingalls, DCSD Director of Mental Health, Dr. Stephanie Crawford-Getz, Lead Counselor for the District, Aaron Reagan, Directors of Personalized Learning, Special Education, Sarah Cannon and Lynette Steinhoff, School Board Director, Christina Chancho-Shore, Superintendent Thomas S. Tucker, PhD, and special guest, Scott Cypers, PhD. Dr. Cypers is the Director of Stress and Anxiety Programs at the Helen Arthur E. Johnson Depression Center. His primary clinical and research interests focus on anxiety and stress-related issues, especially improving outcomes around anxiety treatment and building innovative anxiety treatments. I also want to acknowledge our other Board of Education directors, President David Ray, Vice President Krista Holtzman, Kevin Lung, Anthony Graziano, Elizabeth Hansen, and Susan Meek. Let's get started with some introductory remarks from Board Director Christina Chancho-Shore. Director Chancho-Shore, you are muted. There we go.
Oh, did you guys unmute me? Thank you. Good afternoon, Douglas County School District family, and thank you for joining us for another town hall. It's been amazing to see the great attendance and the participation in these events. It helps make us feel connected, even during this unprecedented time. I want to thank you, families, students, staff, for their patience and flexibility over the past 2 months. The way we're able to transition to remote learning so quickly was absolutely amazing, and I'm proud to see our students continuing to be engaged in learning. I also recognize that the past 2 months have been hard and a lot of work for students, parents, guardians, grandparents, and staff. We appreciate our parents, and I know how hard you are working to support your children's learning remotely. We have families trying to juggle working and assisting their children with remote learning, and I know there are times when it feels incredibly overwhelming. I can personally attest to this. I have 6 grandchildren remote learning as we speak. 2 of them are jumping on the trampoline right behind me, and you might hear them, but they had that as a reward. This has been especially difficult for our families with children who have special needs. To those families, thank you for helping our children with their teachers and service providers virtually. This wouldn't work without your dedication. While this has been challenging and new, there is so much to celebrate. I want to specifically congratulate the class of 2020. Remember, you're resilient and your future is incredibly bright. I want to celebrate the amazing social emotional work that has continued throughout this time of remote learning. I'd also like to recognize the hard work our families and staff have done, supporting our students with special needs. Again, I can feel what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I'm doing the same thing and watching my daughter and son-in-law as well. It is very difficult work. You'll hear specific examples a little later on. Thank you, Douglas County School District's amazing educators and staff for everything you're doing and for caring for our 68,000 students. It's been touching to see our community come together the way that we all have, watching our staff, our students, and our families finding new ways to build relationships. We know that relationships are what counts and what's important, and creative ways to ensure that learning continues. Ways to ensure that we continue to focus on the social emotional needs of mental health needs of our students. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Director Chancho-Shore. You're going to be hearing more from Director Chancho-Shore and the rest of our panelists a little bit later on when we get to the question and answer portion. Before we do get to that, though, I do want to turn it over to Personalized Learning Officer Nancy Ingalls for some opening remarks. Nancy?
Good evening, Douglas County School District community. Thank you for joining us here tonight for this important town hall meeting. And thank you, Director Chancho-Shore, for your opening remarks. As Director Chancho-Shore mentioned, our school district moved into remote learning very quickly. Throughout this process, I've been highly impressed with the way our schools have worked very hard to meet the social emotional needs and mental health needs of our students. Also, our schools have worked very hard to collaborate with families to provide flexibility and individualization as they provide special education services for all of our students on IEPs. During this pandemic, the school district has worked to reach out to students and families every day, every week through a variety of ways. Our school counselors, psychologists, and social workers have reached out to families, provided opportunities for students and families to request meetings, and they've also conducted lots of interaction and work with students and their families. Many of our counselors and mental health providers meet with students individually. They are providing small group instruction and services. They are working with classroom teachers to provide social emotional learning lessons. Many of them create their own videos and lessons that they send to students directly that students can access whenever they need to. They are hosting bunch groups regularly, social skills groups regularly, and they're holding parent meetings. Our special education providers are collaborating with parents to provide a lot of flexibility and individualization for the special education services that are provided. There are some resources on our district website that I want to make sure our community is aware of. One resource is brand new. Our Douglas County School District Healthy Schools team has created a virtual calming corner webpage. This can be found on our district website. If you go to H for Healthy Schools, you'll find the link for the virtual calming corner. There you'll see many resources for relaxation and meditation and other calming resources. It's pretty cool, so I encourage everybody to check it out. Second, on the district website, on the coronavirus updates page, you'll see a list of webinars that are available to the public. Some of these webinars have already occurred and they've been recorded and people can access them here. And if we have upcoming webinars that will be live, they will also be listed for people to access. Also on the coronavirus updates page, you'll see a link that says local resources for parents. This page is full of information and resources in the community that our families might want to access. You'll see lots of community resources for different types of assistance. You'll see many teaching and mental health resources, among other things. And again, that's the local resources for families link that you can find on the coronavirus updates page. In our school district, we continue to host a variety of webinars for our staff and families. Last night, we collaborated with Skyridge Medical Center on a parent university session focusing on managing fears during this pandemic. And of course, we continue to host town halls like this, where we can address community questions and provide information to the community and staff. Now I'm very honored to introduce our special guest, Dr. Sipers. As Mr. Jones mentioned, Dr. Cypers is the Director of Stress and Anxiety Programs at the Helen and Arthur E. Johnson Depression Center. Douglas County School District has entered into a collaboration with Dr. Cypers this year through a generous donation from Kaiser Permanente. He provided for our school counselors, psychologists, social workers, and nurses a comprehensive 2-day training on supporting students with anxiety. Also, Dr. Cypers has delivered several 3-hour trainings to hundreds of our classified staff in the district, and he has hosted evening events for parents on this same topic of serving students with anxiety. Also, he just wrapped up a webinar series of his own called I'm Still Standing, which was support for parents. In the future, we'll continue to expand this work for building capacity in our school district for helping students cope with anxiety in the school setting and at home. Dr. Cypers, thank you so much for your partnership, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much to you all, and thank you for having me and putting on these forums for communities and families to come together. Because one of the first things we know that the virus has kind of isolated us and make us feel like we're alone and have to do things alone. And the fact that we can come together and be a team and a community and recognize that that shared sense is what can help us build through. But I really want to start tonight just to kind of remind parents that I've been sharing a lot that we are in the worst marathon ever. If you think about it, if I told you, hey, let's run a marathon, you don't get any time to prepare. You have to keep running. You don't know when it's going to be over. You kind of have to do it alone and figure it out on your own. Will you want to run with me? No one would say yes, even the hardest or hardiest of runners. And yet here we are in this middle of a pandemic, trying to balance everything, education, keeping our kids afloat, doing that, and having to be multiple roles as parents and schools in collaboration and figuring out how to do this thing in a whole different way. And the marathon is continuing, and now we're getting some guidance that it might start to look differently for different households who make different choices around how they want to run. And so it's going to be an unprecedented, stressful time for our kids and ourselves figuring out how to manage all this. And my goal is to try to help be a resource and support and give families just some tips and tools, and that was what the webinar was about, of what are we seeing each week and how do we prepare to keep things going in this relentless marathon. And one of the things I would encourage you, because it's kind of a really tough marathon, is to continue to make sure before we even start that we're trying to take care of ourselves in the process too. Remember a long time ago when we all used to fly and they would say when the mask drop, you know, who should you put it on first if you have kids? We can forget that in practicality and start trying to put the mask on everyone else, and trying as parents, because of the hardness of all this, to continue to reflect of how we make sure we're doing that for ourselves and how we kind of model that for our kids, that it's healthy to kind of take time to focus on our own well-being and mental health. And so that's kind of what I'm here to kind of reinforce and stress, ways that we can continue to take care of ourselves and do it together as a community and feel, even though it feels like we're running it alone, to realize we don't have to run it alone, and to hear all the things we're doing to try to help support that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cypers, and thank you again for giving us some of your time this evening and joining us for a conversation with our community. We're now going to enter the FAQ, the question and answer portion of our town hall. We are going to answer some of the questions we've received from members of our community, but I do want to note that we're going to answer as many as we possibly can. We did get a lot of responses. So if your question is not answered tonight, please be sure to check our town hall, our community town hall page and our COVID update page for the frequently asked questions that'll be posted probably early next week following the conclusion of this town hall. Due to the sensitive nature of some of these topics, many of those who submitted questions did ask that I ask them on their behalf. I do want to thank our community for sending those in, and I'm happy to do that. Any questions we're not able to get to, again, please be sure to check in at that community town hall page under the communications page on the website, or check in at the COVID-19 updates page. All right, our first question comes from Julia, and she would like to know, how do you teach social emotional learning in a virtual setting? I will go ahead and hand that off to you, Nancy.
Thank you. That's a great question. Our classroom teachers, counselors, social workers, and psychologists have been incredibly creative during this time, providing social emotional learning instruction to our students. Many of them have collaborated together where perhaps the service provider shares lessons with classroom teachers and the classroom teacher may provide the instruction. They may do it together, or our classroom teachers may invite a counselor to come in and do some social emotional learning lessons. Also, like I mentioned earlier, many of our mental health professionals and counselors are meeting individually and in small groups with our students, providing a lot of that instruction. Like I also mentioned before, many of our counselors are facilitating lunch munch groups and social skills groups for our kids, where they do social activities and maybe games, and they're practicing a lot of those skills. Many of our providers at schools have their own web pages on their school website with lots of tools and activities and resources for students to access for meeting their social emotional needs. They also meet with parents quite frequently. Some host parent groups, some meet with parents individually, and some are providing newsletters and resources for parents. A lot of our schools have coordinated virtual spirit weeks and spirit challenges that foster connections to the community. And our schools that utilize sources of strength have had peer leader meetings with their kids, and they are continuing those sources of strength activities that they can share with their school communities.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Our next question is from Vicky, and she would like to know, does DCSD support the recommendation from the Colorado School Safety Resource Center to identify and prioritize the social emotional needs for the student population upon return to school in the fall?
Yes, we absolutely have. Thank you, Vicki, for that question. During the remote learning period, our schools have made social emotional needs of students and families a top priority. Like I've mentioned, our schools are reaching out routinely to students and families, and they've provided an array of services to meet social emotional needs. When we plan our re-entry into school, Douglas County School District will prioritize trauma-informed care and also the monitoring of social emotional needs for all students. Our schools have many systems in place to identify social emotional and mental health needs of students, and we are able to connect students and families with both school and community resources when needed.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from Jan, and I do believe we saw this question quite a few times in the survey responses, and it's a question that's been on my mind as a parent of 3 kids. Can students from DCSD have a Google Meet with a district counselor if they need to, or is there any other kind of DC supports?
Absolutely. So every school has some way for students to request a one-to-one meeting with a counselor at any time. Schools should have this posted somewhere on their school website. Many of these might look like a sign-up link or an email that the student or parent would access and request that meeting, and our school counselors will meet individually. If for some reason parents are not able to find that link or that email, they should contact their school immediately to make sure that they have access.
Great, thank you. And if I may ask an additional question to Mr. Aaron Reagan, who's with us, he's our lead counselor. Aaron, have you seen some of this in action? How has this digital format of counseling been accepted in the district?
I think overall, Nate, and thanks for that question because it's very timely. Overall, this has gone really well. We certainly had to adapt the way that we work a little bit, but there have been unintended benefits. I've heard from a lot of counselors that they've had meetings with kids, parents were in the room, and what started with a one-on-one meeting often evolved into a really rich family discussion. And so it's actually been a really good experience, not just for counselors, but I'd like to hope for our community as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Our next question comes to us from Erin. She wants to know, how can parents help socially anxious students transition back to school in the fall? And I actually will toss this to Dr. Cypers, since this one has to deal with anxiety issues.
Thank you. And a great way to think about anxiety, and what we've been working to train the district to, is to think of anxiety a lot like the notion of teaching your kids to swim or ski or do any kind of learned activity. There's probably some skills you want them to be able to do before you get them on that mountain or you get them in the water. And so there's usually some emotional regulation tools that can involve breathing. There's usually some thought tools that involve identifying what you're worried about. I call that your worry brain. What's your worry brain telling you? And learning how to talk back to your worry brain. And then there's a certain skills that help us do, like breaking things down, like rehearsing and planning. And so we want kids to kind of develop and have some of these tools. But what we know with anxiety, if all we did is talk about skiing or swimming, how good of a swimmer or skier could you ever become? No matter how much we talk about it, that sense of mastery and ability to handle things only comes through doing. And so again, if you want to prepare your kids over the summer to re-enter school, wherever you see their anxiety challenges, if that's writing essays, if that's talking to new people, if that's advocating for teachers, what you can do for them this summer is practice a lot. Create what I call scrimmage conditions. Hey, you're going back to school in the fall. We got to get you ready. Let's practice. You can have fun with it. I have a kid who's a little more presentation anxious. So every week or so, she has to come give a presentation just to practice, because she's going to have to do that more in school. And so we want to not just teach these skills, but we want to make sure we put them into action. And we definitely want to be doing this a lot over the summer, because you're right, there's so much lack of practice happening when we're sheltering at home and getting to avoid these conditions. And we're being primed through the media and everything with just a lot of anxiety messaging, which is about avoiding. And we definitely want to avoid these biological threats, but things that are social in nature that I call psychological threats, we really want to learn to tackle. And your teachers, and we've trained, and that's been a big part of this project, is training everyone in these skills and helping students develop, but then putting them into conditions where they can practice and feel that mastery. So the best thing you can do is not let your kids avoid and keep making them practice.
Great. Thank you for that insight, Dr. Cypers. We appreciate that. Our next question is going to be for Dr. Crawford Getz. This one comes to us from Bridget. And Dr. Crawford, she wants to know, how can parents best cope and maintain balance during this time of remote learning?
Well, Bridget, that is the question of the day, and I appreciate you asking that. You know, it's a really hard time for parents to balance all their tasks. So remind yourself that there are so many more tasks put on parents at this time. That's our work schedules, our childcare that's 24/7 now, and we're now teaching our children. And then for parents with children who have additional needs, the demands increase even more. And you're juggling facilitating virtual special education sessions and services. So give yourself permission to do what you can and then let some things go, as the most important thing right now is staying healthy and caring for yourself and your family. Remember, as Dr. Cypers said, that caring for yourself is the first step. And if you do that, you'll be a better caretaker for others. Parents can also do their best to manage their own stress and, also give themselves some grace that this is a hard time and it's okay to show signs of stress. It's positive for children to see their parents have stress and then watch how they manage that stress in healthy ways. So show your children how you take a break and do something else, such as watch a movie or go outside for a bit. Keep structure and routine for yourself and keep that structure and routine for your children. And ask for support when you need it. You don't have to do this alone. You can ask from family as well as the schools and your community resources. And then give yourself some time to connect with family and friends and relax. Make sure to eat well and exercise and get adequate sleep. And use technology for positive activities, such as connecting virtually with friends and family that are far away. And then take some time to sit with your family and talk about some of the positives of being at home together during this time and discuss what you're grateful for with your children. And if you do that, you're doing good because, we're all in this together.
That's great advice, Stephanie. And I have to remind myself at least once a week to just go have a normal conversation with my kids and ask them how their day went, even though I spent the entire day with them. So
Absolutely.
thanks. We're going to go back to Dr. Cypress now. This question is one that we got so frequently that we wanted to attribute it to a few people. Tammy, Suzanne, Rondala, and Brooke would like to know, Dr. Cypress, how can parents help children who are struggling, who are withdrawing a little bit, or maybe even lashing out because of the current circumstances?
Yeah, great question, and a really important one. And what I like to talk about, I like to think of the notion that feelings are like water in a dam. And when you're starting to see signs that the dam is breaking or cracking a little bit, you want to give more energy on ways to get the water out. And that can be creative ways. That can be letting your kids get them out more, get some exercise in, give them physical ways to get it out, or creative ways to get it out through art, drawing, talking about it. One of the things we've developed that we will pass out to the district too is a creative way is to watch the movie Inside Out that talks about feelings. And we've developed a guide while you're watching that can help lead to conversations to talk through time around COVID and just emotions in general in games. But what I would say is making more time for that, and also to know it's very normal, even for us as adults, that these feelings, I would say we're all having very normal feelings during this quarantine, to be angry, upset, grieving. We have lost so much. And to not give time and space to think that that's going to impact us. I always say we want to talk about the lemonade, but we also need to talk about the lemons and that this sucks. There's a lot of hard parts to this too. So making room for some of those conversations and let them know it's okay and what can we do to get those lemons out is a really important kind of piece. But really just thinking about, am I doing enough to get the water out? And to know that these feelings, because there is so much water, might come more intensely and more in waves. And if you start to be really concerned, if they can't do what they need to do or function, maybe to kind of reach out, as you said, to the community and get some other strategies too, but to have a little bit more emotions, to be a little more emotional, very normal. And also, again, to really introduce that concept, hey, we have water. What are we going to do to get it out today? What can we build in the day that's fun, creative? But let's make sure we're getting the water out around the different feelings we might be encountering.
Thank you, Dr. Cypress. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are there any things that you've been doing specifically to get some of the water out?
Yes. So I had learned actually back in college that if I don't work out and run, I don't have sanity. And I've learned that it's so important that I will sacrifice sleep or most things to make sure I get that workout in. So I still wake up at 6:30 or 5:30 every day to get a run in. and to really reset my frame of mind. At the end of the day, we talk. We go on one-on-one walks with our kids to create space for them. We got a new puppy, so that's created time that we're together where we just talk about what's coming up. And I have 3 little kids, so they've had challenges themselves, and kind of creating spaces to get the water out and talk about them. And so those, I guess, working out, and really I'm also very social. So connecting with people and calling and having those conversations just to check in and talk about both the lemons and the lemonade right now. I tend to need a little more lemon talk than venting about the lemons than the lemonade, but other people need a little bit more of both.
I think that's understandable right now. And if you find any motivation to spare for the running, please feel free to send it my way. I could use it. We're going to shift gears back to Mrs. Ingalls now, a special education question. Ms. Ingalls, what are summer plans for special needs students? What are we currently planning from the Douglas County School District?
Our parents in Douglas County have recently received an email from Dr. Tucker that said that our school district buildings are closed through June 30th and that all summer learning activities will be remote. So this does include extended school year, or ESY, for our students with IEPs that qualify for ESY. This year, ESY will be conducted remotely, and it will happen during the month of June, the weeks of June 8th, June 15th, and June 22nd. Our remote ESY services will be tailored to each student's IEP goals that were determined to require ESY by their IEP team. Individual ESY schedules will be sent to parents by the end of this month.
Great, thank you so much, Nancy. And I know I'm going to give some folks some whiplash, so I apologize, but we're going to go back to Dr. Cypers now. We have a question from Stacy, Dr. Cypers, and she would like to know, how can parents support their children in learning self-motivation and focus during this time?
Wow, that's a really good question. And to the point that I would wonder, is that really a necessary goal on top of everything else going on when we're in the middle of a pandemic? Trying to get our kids to also be motivated on their own to do what they need to do, like schoolwork or stuff like that. Is it possible? Probably yes. And what we've learned from motivation talk, usually it's about understanding what their own goals are, and we call it finding the hook. So if your kid wants to be a star soccer player, to talk about how whatever activity they're doing or need to do kind of ties into that goal, to try to build some of that motivation, but to really expect our kids to, you know, wake up and want to do schoolwork right now, to want to be motivated to do these things in the environments that they're being presented, I might say is ambitious, not impossible, and maybe just finding what does work right now and to set the bar a little lower for yourself and for them, that it might just be about getting through and running the marathon the best they can, as opposed to like being excited every day to run this really awful marathon. But I would say if you do, it's about trying to find the hook, understanding what motivates them. And for some, it's not the intrinsic motivation that happens later. It's more about rewards, like, hey, getting to jump on the trampoline that was said. Hey, about getting to get more. My kids are really into Minecraft right now, but they don't get I call it, you don't get your dessert before you eat your vegetables. And that's a matter of life. Would I love my kids to wake up and want to do their vegetables? Yes, but I'm not kind of expecting them to do that right now, but I am expecting them to eat their vegetables if they want their dessert or they don't get their dessert.
Kind of reminds me of the story about the jar and filling it with the big rocks first and then the pebbles and then the sand to make sure you're making room for everything there. And just in terms of setting your priorities.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And again, I think that's as true as parents. We've put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do this perfectly and to try to be perfect. And I want to remind everyone there's a learning curve to everything, and there's no playbook for how to do all this in a pandemic. And so to know you're not going to do it perfectly, to kind of be okay with that, and to let your kids be okay with that too, and to try to just do the best you can and leave room for what you need to and what are the priorities, as Nate just kind of talked about.
Thank you, Dr. Cypers. Another special education question for Ms. Ingalls here from Rachel. She would like to know, how does DCSD plan to satisfy IEPs, 504s, and intense mental health needs once school resumes?
Thank you, Rachel. At the end of this school year, our parents of students with IEPs will receive IEP goal progress reports. Once school resumes in the fall, all individualized plans will be implemented. Now, I know that our schools, our teachers, our related service providers will be working very hard at the very beginning of the year to really take a look at the needs of all of our students and sort of determine where they are for the start of the school year. And it's possible a lot of adjustments might be made. Our classroom teachers might be making adjustments for their instruction for all students. And our special education providers might be making individualized adjustments for students with IEPs. If any adjustments need to be made to an individualized plan, those teams can be convened and have meetings to make those adjustments. I do know that our teachers and our special service providers are so eager to work with our students in person again, and they are going to be ready for the beginning of the school year, no matter what that looks like.
Thank you, Nancy. One more for you, so don't run off anywhere. We got another special education question from Melissa this time. She would like to know, if further remote learning is necessary, what kind of support will be offered to special education students?
If we continue in remote learning for some time, our special education providers will continue to collaborate with parents and communicate to make sure that services are provided in a manner that meets the needs of the student and the family. Our remote special education services are designed to meet individual needs, and they are designed for students to maintain skills and make progress on their IEP goals. So that communication and collaboration between teachers, providers, and parents is really important. I can see also, Melissa, that you asked about what about students who need additional help with signing and speech. I want to make sure that our parents are encouraged to reach out to their child's case manager or service provider to discuss specific needs. If there are questions about meeting those individualized needs, just reach out and ask those questions, and these providers will absolutely work to individualize their services.
Thank you, Nancy. Dr. Cypers, we're going to come back to you now. We've got a question from Aaron. He'd like to know, what do you see as the single most pressing mental health concern among students?
Yeah, I really do believe at this point in time, I think it will change as we go on and go further, but I see two big challenges coming ahead. One is, again, I do think there might be more depression coming on the rise because of the conditions of continuing to have to be isolating, some of the hopeless feeling because this continues to go on, as well as just the lack of being able to do a lot of meaningful activities and natural ways you like to take care of your dam are kind of closed to us in many ways. And that isolation just makes us really vulnerable, and it's going to continue to go on. So I see depression kind of as one of the big challenges right now. I think anxiety, as we try to break out of this isolation and re-enter, will be a big one. But I also think a big kind of a mental health challenge, but not necessarily something we're going to diagnose. But in the summer, there's going to be a lot of downtime. Camps are not coming back in the session. Schools have actually been something kids can focus on, get productive with, do. And that's not going to be there. And so there's going to be a lot more time and downtime that is going to make that right for both depression, but also just to be in our head and overthink things and do. So I see those are some of the big challenges kind of on the horizon. And some of my folk are kind of predicting what they would call a second wave of mental health issues that come from a lot in trauma based on loss. And some people have experienced a lot of grief and loss, and death continues. I mean, we keep looking at death counts, and it's hard not to recognize that that's impacting personally families, but on the scale. So those are some of the challenges I see. And then one of the things, not just the challenges, but understanding that depression might be one of the issues we're facing, trying to have things we can do to fight depression. So I'll take a quick minute to talk about that. If you think of depression, I do talk a lot about depression kind of like a virus. And we've had a lot now of experience with a virus, but a virus is unrelenting and wants to take over. It doesn't care how, but it has a goal. And if you think of depression a little bit like that, here are the ways that virus tries to take over. It tries to get us to isolate. It tries to overwhelm our capacity to deal with our emotions. It talks to us a little bit of what I would call a campaign, a propaganda campaign. It tells us you're a burden, things are never going to get better, you're worthless, and it tries to take away all hope and meaning. So those are kind of the target areas. If you really want to help right now, those are things to target with both yourself and your kids, to try to make sure we have hope and meaning, to try to not let us get too isolated, to make sure, as I said, we're getting the water and taking care of the water in our dam and our kids, and to kind of recognize that depressive propaganda and do things to challenge it. And that's where that positivity comes in, and gratitude and seeing the good are some of the antidotes to fighting off that virus. And so last thing I'll say about that, if you've ever seen Harry Potter or read Harry Potter or anything, a great way to think about depression is like a Dementor. And we have to do these things to fight it off, just like a Patronus.
Thank you, Dr. Cypers. My Patronus, by the way, is an otter, if anyone's curious. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I want to switch gears just a little bit. We've done this the last 2 town hall meetings. We do a quick lightning round. This time, however, as part of the RSVP form for this town hall, we asked community members and staff to share with us some celebrations they've experienced related to social emotional learning and serving students with special needs. So we're going to go ahead and turn it to our panelists now so that they can read some of the nice things that our community has shared with us over the last week.
All right, this is Dr. Stephanie Crawford Getz. And from Camille, she says that Little Pups has been able to bring community members into virtually read to the kids. And from Karen, she says, my son has been taking on his education quite independently for a 6th grader and has even been motivated to exercise by running a mile or 2 or using the elliptical machine in our basement for 45 minutes. From Lisa, her son has done surprisingly well with online learning despite his challenges. And from Faith, Mr. Archer, Miss Anton, and Miss Abbott at Sand Creek Elementary School have adapted so well to the online learning and have been incredibly helpful to our son. And from Brooke, my 3rd grader was very proud to have completed a Central Perk from Friends Lego set. That is 1,070 pieces and 207 steps.
That's amazing. This is Lynette Steinhoff. From Katie, I really appreciate how hard our speech support from DCSD has tried to support my 4-year-old in addressing his IEP. It is not easy. From Lindsay, our OT, occupational therapist, has been amazing doing virtual sessions with us, and our kiddo really loves working with her, even if he can't see her in person.
Hello, I'm Sarah Cannon. And from Andy, we felt my child's special ed teachers one-on-one sessions with him in which the teacher goes over daily assignments and helps review the material and answer questions are very helpful. And then from Laura from Mesa Middle School. Our son's team from Mesa Middle School has done an absolutely outstanding job meeting their students' needs. He's engaged, he feels connected, and absolutely loved that one of his teachers got his classmates online for a surprise virtual birthday party. E-learning has been a great experience for our son, thanks to the fantastic team at Mesa Middle School.
I'm going to share some celebrations that came in from staff members. From Melissa, the April 20th staff development offerings for social, emotional, and mental health for both students and staff was off the hook amazing. I was extremely grateful and really needed that boost and those resources. I am grateful. From Rachel, my 5th grade crew and I participated in a video call scavenger hunt. All 24 kids showed up to play. It was a fun experience for all. From Brandy, the students I work with are doing great and really showing the intentional work they are doing as if I was next to them. I am so proud of them. From Lisa, I am an elementary school speech language pathologist in Douglas County and would like to celebrate the families I work with at Pine Lane Elementary. Our parent crew and student crew have embraced virtual learning despite its many challenges. Most of my students are accessing their speech language services through teletherapy and are continuing to grow their communication skills. From Julie, I have requested that my students do 45 minutes per week on a math website, and many of my SSN students are doing over 100 minutes. They are loving math. From Jill, the mental health team at Pine Lane Elementary have continued to support the students and classes they see on a regular basis. Additionally, they continue to support families through the use of Google Meets and phone conversations. The way they have stepped up during this time is inspiring. I'm so proud of the work they are continuing to do and opportunities they are offering to our community. From Annie, I would like to comment on how helpful and supportive all of my parents have been through remote learning. I currently have 30 students on my caseload that receive direct social emotional support on their IEP, and all 100% sign up and show up for their weekly session with me on Google Hangout. It truly shows the value families are placing on mental health during this trying time, and I am so grateful to help. I'm really proud, this is myself talking, Nancy. I'm so proud of seeing these celebrations and hearing continuously how grateful and proud our staff are for our parents and how hard they are working to support their students in engaging in all of these remote opportunities. Thank you.
This is Aaron Reagan, and I have the honor of sharing some parent celebrations. These are parents that reached out to us to recognize staff members. First off is James. James shared, I would like to give a huge shout out to Miss Jen Winkleman at Heritage Elementary for the support she has provided to the students, staff, and community during this time. Her guidance has been critical for the support of all involved as we work through this crisis. Next is from Jennifer. Jennifer would love to give a shout out to Mrs. Lori Portman, counselor at Ponderosa High School. Our family has been hit hard these last few months and have had particular challenges with my 2 students at Ponderosa. She has done a fantastic job helping both my kids and myself navigate through these challenges. She's gone well above and beyond, and we are so grateful to her. And last, from Carrie, a Crest Hill teacher, Mrs. Lechuga, held weekly club meetings. It was the highlight of my daughter's week, and we are so thankful for her dedication to the students and their well-being during this time.
Thank you, Aaron. And thank you to all of our panelists for reading that. And obviously, thank you to the community for sending those in. FYI, I'm going to steal all of those, and they'll be making an appearance on A Few Good Minutes. And yes, that is a shameless plug for our video that comes out every Friday, talking about the cool stuff that our students and staff are doing in the district. Check it out, new episode tomorrow. So thank you to all of our panelists for participating today. I do want to give a couple of minutes here at the end for some closing comments from our guests. And I do want to start with Dr. Cypers. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you have any closing remarks, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much to the district and the learning group to having me. And what I would say in my closing remarks, after hearing everyone, I grew up in the field of education. My mom's an English teacher. I've worked in the military, and I learned this idea that if you don't have an acronym for something, it's not real. And so the acronym, I know it's a little long, but I'm going to ask you as parents to try to stay smart during this time. And what I mean by that, using your smart brain. And I'm going to quickly go over, I wish if I was more technologically savvy, it would pull up on the screen. But SMART kind of stands for this. First, kind of setting the right mindset and having kind of the mindset as we talked about for having grace for yourself, being able to recognize there's a learning curve and taking care of your own stress and kind of setting that mindset that I got to take care of the water in the dam. The M stands for modeling. And as I said, remember your kids are learning more by watching you than what you say. So trying to model some of the socio-emotional pieces that you want your kids to have. And if you want your kids to be resilient, kind of talking to them about their resiliency and modeling your own resilience to help them do that. And the A stands for anxiety, because that's what I spend. And just to understand that this is a really unprecedented time. And COVID-19 is something that our anxious part of our brain doesn't comprehend very well. It was designed to protect us from cobras and snakes, and a biological threat that you can't see, that you don't understand, that can really kill you, is something that doesn't compute very well in our anxious brain. And so to be a little more on edge and anxious overall makes sense. But when that anxiety tends to prime and get you then to not do things that are psychological in nature, we want to figure out those tools we talked about to fight back and not let that happen. And then the R kind of stands for recognizing the signs in yourself and others that your dam might be needing some extra help. And the big thing to kind of recognize in that dam, if your sleep is really impacted, if you can't focus, but if you can't do the things you need to do, if you can't parent in the way you want to, or if you can't go to work, and it's really starting to get in the way, reach out to your community as part of that R, and really recruit people. And we need community at this time. And I love to see the community that Douglas County has built, and proud to be part of helping that. And I want to continue to encourage you to reach out to your community. And then the T stands for things to talk about. And again, keep talking to your kids about the virus. Back to a Harry Potter reference, think of the virus like Voldemort. If we keep thinking it's he who must not be named, we give it more power. When we talk about it, it's part of what we can do to take away its power. But remember, your kids at different ages need to have different conversations. And besides talking to them about that, talking to them about their resiliency and how they can overcome, but making room for both the lemonade, which I love to hear, but to make room for talking about the lemons. Even this summer, we were supposed to go to Italy, not happening. My kids had all these cool camps that they were looking forward to, not happening. We love to swim. We love to do things. Guess what's not happening? And that kind of sucks. And so making room to talk about that and to be okay, but to remind us, how do we make lemonade, and to kind of tune into that. And then the last thing to keep talking about is this notion that this is a really hard marathon. And are we setting a manageable pace for ourselves and our kids to run through it successfully? And part of that is not being too ambitious, not trying to do too much, and setting a pace that you can keep doing, and talking to them about what that might look like both for you and for them over the summer. So stay smart and take care of yourself. And again, know people have your back and want to be there to help.
Thanks for the insight, Dr. Cypress. And again, thank you for spending a Thursday evening with us here in the Douglas County School District. We appreciate it. We're gonna move on to Director Chancho Shore. Director, if you have any closing remarks, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you. You do such a nice job with these town halls, so much appreciated. And I do appreciate a few good minutes. I think they are hysterical, and I think it's fun that you guys do that. I want to, I'm really proud of Douglas County Schools for addressing mental health and having a town hall that addresses mental health. And Dr. Cypress, I couldn't be more excited that you referenced Harry Potter, because that will help me remember that depression is like a dementor, and that I just need to call upon my Patronus at those times to help protect my mental health and well-being. So thank you. It was wonderful to be able to be applicable and apply something that I just learned in this last hour. Additionally, I want to say, teachers, oh my gosh, there isn't enough to say about staff and what's been happening in this pandemic with schools and staff. And you need to know you are doing a good job. Parents, you are enough. So give yourselves a pat on the break. Make sure you do take care of yourselves, and know that whatever you're doing, that's enough. If it's a day where you take a break, or if it's a week, or if it's a month, that's okay. The educators in our system will do what we need to do to assure that our kids are where they need to be by the time they graduate. So what you're doing is enough. I appreciate all of the halls. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chancho Shore. And I'm now going to take that endorsement you just gave us and run with it. It's going to be slapped right on a few good minutes next week. Last but not least, we have Dr. Thomas Tucker, the superintendent of the Douglas County School District, to close us out with a few remarks from him. Dr. Tucker, are you with us?
And to all of our partners in the mental health and the medical community for being great stewards of our awesome county, and also being great partners of the Douglas County School District. And again, our panelists, you've been absolutely great. Thank you for sharing your stories of engagement and how our families and students are really struggling right now with this new normal, but I'm certain a temporary new normal. Social emotional learning is incredibly important, especially now, but folks, this was one of the top priorities for me, and certainly for the board. When I came into the district over 2 years ago, you can find social emotional learning as a top priority by the board, as indicated in the board's end statements. So this just didn't happen because of COVID-19. This has been a top priority. We know how important this is to the development of our students and our staff as well. I am thankful that we continue to find new and innovative ways to stay connected with our students, because at the end of the day, it's about connections. It's about building relationships with our students, our families, our staff, and community. I realize remote learning hasn't been easy, as Director Chancho Shore said so eloquently. It's been difficult. And we know on our parents, we know it's been difficult on our staff, and of course, difficult on our students, especially if you're trying to juggle helping with educating our students with online work. And it's hard for us to watch our students and our children to miss their socializing with their friends, and not completely understanding why did this thing here come to invade America? Why is it invading Douglas County? Our world has changed, and this is something that's totally new to all of us. But like you, I am hopeful that we are getting closer to being able to start and getting back to normal and have some more familiar routines. As of now, as you've heard me state and in my communication, the Douglas County School District is planning to open back for in-person learning this fall. However, and importantly, we are creating contingency plans in the case if this is not possible. We're building these plans, we're building principles with all district leadership, with our CIPG department, and with our cabinet, and with our executive directors of schools, with input from our teachers. And I'll talk real quickly about that. We're going to send out very shortly a survey to all of our parents and community members to get their input on how our remote teaching and learning plan is going. And we're going to build a task force so that we will have a smooth in-person opening, or we'll have contingency plans to address school as it happens in the fall. And we're committed to doing everything possible to educate our students. You've heard from these stories, Nate and others, from stories from our panelists, that education is going on in our district. It hasn't stopped because of COVID-19. We want to continue to strive to give the best education possible to our students, and also to give our staff the support that they need. And we'll continue to keep everyone posted on our plans. But in the meantime, I do hope that after this school year wraps up, and next time and we get together again, that we ask all of you to take time and have some rest. Take time to reflect on things. As Dr. Cypher said, have conversations about the lemons and the lemonade, and engage in relaxation. If you need to take time, if you need to relax, you need some you time, please do it. Don't worry about much of this stuff, because at the end, it's not going to really matter. Again, take time for yourself, and your hard work is much appreciated, and you are making a difference in the lives of our 68,000 students and our 8,600 employees. Have a great evening. Nate.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. And that is going to do it for this town hall. I do want to thank again our panelists, Dr. Scott Cypers, Nancy Ingalls, our Director of Personalized Learning, our Personalized Learning Officer, my apologies, and Director Chancho Shore for joining us this evening, as well as our guests from Personalized Learning, Aaron Reagan, Lynette Steinhoff, Sarah Cannon, Dr. Stephanie Crawford Getz. Thank you guys so much for being with us this evening. And I do want to give a shout out to the people that make this possible, Gautam Sethi, and Mike Riley from IT. I do want to give a shout out to some of my own team members as well, Stacy Rader, Stacy Blaylock, and our show producer, Chris Shalene, who continue to do great work on our Board of Education meetings, our town halls, and everything in between. So thank you guys so much for everything you do. If your question was not answered tonight, please do check in with our FAQs. They're going to be available on our COVID-19 updates page. They're also going to be available on our communications page under our community town hall tab. Please check that out. You can also view our former town halls, our previous town halls, on that link as well. And you can get there by navigating to the communications page. So again, to our community, thank you guys for everything you do. Please keep sending us all of your great news. I hope you're all well, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. Thank you so much.